Hello, this is Reminiscible. Let's talk about common sense. Or even better than that, let's talk about, something nice that segues into objective morality. I guess we could start on the basis of, that's kind of cringy, um, just general insecurity, okay? People are insecure, so we have families, we have friends, we have religions. Now, before everyone leaves and goes like, "Oh, he's gonna bash my family, friends, and religion," no, I'm only gonna bash your religion. So, um, I, of course, there are the necessary, like, biochemical needs to have family and friends. Um, you could argue the same for religion, but the void that spirituality fills is is an existential one, and there is a alternative solution which involves less hypocrisy. Um, Now, hypocrisy can cause some mental disturbances, some mental chaos, some cognitive dissonance. Um, I'm going to categorize those three things as the same general concept because they, for the sake of this video, they have similar source, which would be hypocrisy, like insecurity, directionlessness, meaninglessness, um, lack of self-worth, right? Um, a lot of people either act hypocritically or intentionally ignorant or intentionally stupid, um, or either those three things, or they have no self-worth. Um, it's I'm going to introduce a model, basically a model where you can have self-worth, where you don't need to be a nihilist to be objective. So that is basically, it would be nice if I had a chalkboard. Start writing on the wall, maybe. Um, then then you could really call me the crazy professor writing on my bedroom wall. So I wish I had a PowerPoint presentation. That would look good. Let's start with self-worth. So you are an observer. You are able to rationalize your own existence via whether it's your thoughts, your decisions, your ability to produce results from your actions. Like there's an interconnect. Like actions, your actions produce results based on your thoughts. Therefore, you can conclude that you, the observer, exists and is a person. Now, let's say that's your definition of a person is the scope of you. Now, in that reference, that works. You have worth. You are the only person in existence. That's a bit lonely, so the utility monster wants friends. Okay. You have a mother and father, hopefully, and they are also people. For whatever definition, for whatever reasons you consider them as people, they exist. Okay, great. So that's like about 3 people, give or take. Now, you can keep increasing your scope from family to friends to social cliques to religion to your neighborhood, your school, your age group, your ethnicity, your city, everyone in the religion worldwide. You can keep expanding until you get less and less discriminatory, until you include all humans or all intelligent life or intelligent life and other sorts of life. Um, this is with the assumption that humans are intelligent, of course. So, intelligent as in comparably intelligent to humans. Parrots, dolphins, cats, dogs, aliens. So, that would be the scope of what you consider to be a person. Now, based on the differences between those people, say you are a white person and there is a black person. If there is a similarity between how your brains are wired, you could argue that if you are a person, then the black person is also a person. Some people, it's just an approach to arguing that someone is a person is if the brains work similarly, right? Because then the thoughts would have something in common. There would be similar availability of emotions, thoughts, ideas, concepts, self-identities. So, well, not like the capacity for self-identity, self-awareness. So, you could argue that anything similar to you is a person. Now, that's my model is there's these different scopes of broadening your definition of what is a person, right? And you can go as broad as plants are people, rocks are people, atoms are people, but past a certain point you lose the nervous system and you say, well, if it doesn't have a nervous system, does it have feelings? Does it feel sympathy, compassion, love, pain, suffering, mental chaos, like motherhood, warmthy feelings? That is that doesn't necessarily apply to rocks. Probably doesn't apply to broccoli. That wasn't a joke. I'm serious. I don't feel guilty about eating broccoli out of practicality and because I have to eat something. So maybe if there's aliens that viewed us on the same ratio of intellect as us to them as broccoli to us, then I would revise my feelings about broccoli in order to not be hypocritical if I didn't like the aliens eating me, or my family or my friends. Likewise, if aliens viewed us as ants, and I didn't want to be treated as an ant, then maybe I would treat ants better. If the aliens viewed us as livestock, farmed us for food and ate us, and I didn't want my friends and family to be butchered or eaten or grown in cages, then maybe I would revise my feelings about how livestock are treated, right? So that's where hypocrisy and common sense apply to the scope of what you consider a person. The aliens being sophisticated, advanced culture, developed, intelligent enough, maybe they're strong AI, in order to be justified in viewing us as ants or broccoli or livestock because of that ratio of intellect. Now, I don't know how to weigh intellect. Basically, for me, it's kind of, I don't have this IQ scale. I just have, does it have a nervous system? Does it have a brain? Can it recognize itself in a mirror? If all three of those apply, great, it's comparable to a human. If only some of them apply, I just give it the benefit of the doubt because I have the luxury to be a vegan, so I don't feel bad about that. And some religions also encourage veganism because they don't like enslaving animals or butchering animals or having them in cages or killing them. Um, I actually there has to be some model for if you're going to stay a vegetarian where you say, okay, I want a model of weighing suffering where I determine suffering as bad, and then if I look at a animal product, I say, well, how much of this product did the animal produce? So if it's a chicken wing, like that that's the flesh. So how much of the flesh is edible? You take the wing. That fraction of the animal is that fractions of the animal's life which you have to look at. So let's say you buy an entire chicken, right? Then you are looking at the chicken's entire life and like, okay, it was in the cage, that's bad. It has its beak chopped, that's bad. It was in close quarters, that's bad. Confinement, blah 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 blah. Neck wrung, tossed in boiling water, killed, right? And then, of course, even if you decapitate something, the brain still works for a bit. So, what is it, 30 seconds the response time after you decapitate someone? They can still, like, respond and move their eyes around in reaction if you ask them to nicely. So, yeah, I know. Some people think, oh, if I'm decapitated, then I suddenly cease to exist. No, your brain has oxygen for a while until you bleed out or run out of oxygen. So they don't use anesthetics for chickens, unfortunately. Anyways, animal rights intro aside, there's got to be some sort of model to say, okay, is that relevant or is it not relevant? And my relevancy is based on a weighted analysis of the chicken. I say, okay, all of that's the amount of suffering it had. I give it some numerical value and correlate that to, okay, if I was the chicken, this is how I would feel at the end of my life, all that suffering. At each point in my life, the summation of that suffering is is all of the suffering I went to. And I take that chunk of suffering and I say, okay, if I buy the entire chicken, I paid multiple people to inflict that suffering on the chicken. Due to the way the economy works and how people are forced to work for a living because they need to survive, then I, as the consumer, take the blame, and I say, okay, I purchased the chicken, I take the results of the labor that I paid for, and that is the cruelty which that I was responsible for, that I am responsible for. That portion of the chicken's suffering is now, the blame goes to me. You can blame other people, but in a consumer society, the blame goes, in my opinion, to the consumer. And then you weight it, okay, but that's absurd, because chickens aren't as intelligent as humans, right? I could, of course, argue, well, they're as intelligent as babies, and so it's the same as killing a baby. And objectively, yeah, if I saw a dead baby and a dead chicken, I might feel the same way. But since I'm a subjective organism, I would obviously say, well, oh no, it's much worse to kill the baby, and oh, this mother will be mad at me if I'm not offended, and oh, it's my own species, so that's, what if it happened to my baby? So of course, well, what'll people think if I'm not sufficiently appalled that a human baby as opposed to a chicken was eaten? Oh no. So I have all of these things to consider, and then of course, well, yes. And of course, us being very species supremacists, of course, you wouldn't want to offend a supremacist by saying, oh, well, actually, your species isn't that important objectively. So, of course, don't eat human babies. Now, but what is the correlation with chickens? It's really up to you to decide, but you have to consider the suffering of the chicken, the portion of the chicken which you are buying as a consumer, and maybe you buy the whole chicken, it's only 99%. Maybe part of that goes to feather a pillow. Maybe part of that is not purchased at all. Maybe part of it you can blame on the workers, right? Make your own model, but account for the suffering, the portion of what was eaten, and then your own conclusion on multiply it by what is the worth of the chicken's life, okay? And no, don't say, oh, it's going to die anyways, right? Humans are going to die anyways. Do you see anyone saying, well, it's okay to kill the baby because it's going to die anyways? No. You don't even see parents being like, oh, should I have a baby if I have to tell it that it's doomed to die someday? So that's a downer, and it can be used. That's saying that it's okay to kill someone because it's going to die someday is an overgeneralization, right? Because we're transhumanists. We want to be immortal, or some. No, I take that back. I take that all back. A humanist believes that suffering of humans is bad, and as a byproduct of that humans have the right to be healthy, have a good well-being, have a good quality of life, have a reasonably good lifestyle, and have the choice of whether to live or not. Now, when you give birth to a baby without sufficiently advanced technology and wealth in order to keep that baby immortal, you're depriving it of the choice as soon as you bring it into existence. It's doomed to die. Now, you could say, oh, no, I'm sorry. My supper. You could say, oh, no. The baby, I'm going to cryogenically freeze it, wait for technology to be sufficiently advanced, upload its brain into a virtual simulation that can run its brain in a virtual reality where it can persist indefinitely, and we'll keep the server running until the universe ends, right? And then you can say, okay, go ahead and have your baby. My point is, I don't think most parents consider that humanist vein of justification for having children. There are other justifications, like outbreeding stupid people, or just psychological fulfillment, which you can get from religion, but that's a separate matter. Or altruism, even. You can get fulfillment from altruism. You leave your mark on the world, and it's very resource effective. Because you don't have someone else already raised the baby into adulthood. So oh right, the model, we have to say, okay, we agree that it's going to die anyways is irrelevant. Or it is relevant, but because we don't want to apply it to humans, we don't want to be hypocritical, we're not going to apply it to animals. Animals are similar to humans in the brain. How similar? Well, let's say this chicken, it's 100th as intelligent, but it's not a human, so let's give it 1/10 of the value again. And okay, this 1,000 chickens. We'll say 1,000 chickens is worth 1 adult human. Babies are stupider. Scope of morality can be very touchy about babies and whose baby it is and whether that baby belongs to a minority or a foreigner or a jihadist. So, now I can't monetize this video. So, I was trying to give examples of people who are dehumanized. Just like a jihadist might dehumanize a American soldier, because, well, you're basically attempting to wipe the other religion and all of those people in that religion off the face of the planet. So, or, well, actually, minus the agitator effect of aggroing the religion so it gets more popular if you kill their members because of the martyrdoms of the people you kill. Yeah, soldiers aren't very good at wiping religions off the face of the planet because they make martyrs. But they are good at creating opportunities for arms dealers to sell lots of weapons for people who want revenge on people who are bombing their countries. Syria, Lebanon, or not Lebanon, Syria, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, plenty of countries during colonialism, although that was maybe cannon shells instead of bombs. Oh man, the U.S. has had so many wars. I don't even know where to begin. I listed some of the more hype ones. Bayer and Monsanto merging is like beyond nightmare fuel. That is like, okay, nightmare fuel is like bees going extinct and the ramifications of not having flying pollinators. Monsanto and Bayer merging is like, oh, all of the food production in the developed world, all the GMO food production, so if you want to use Roundup, is now controlled. I don't want to use Roundup. It takes a lot of oil, and it kills a lot of insects, and there's the bioaccumulation, and it's bad for animals that eat insects, etc. And obviously other reasons, like being toxic. Not just to plants. But Monsanto is the company that named like 1 million plus, I think at least 1.5 million people with Agent Orange. Yeah, you go up to the wiki entry, it's now like heavily censored, but yeah, that they produced for Vietnam and did the chemical warfare, which is now which was then illegal under international law, and the UN. I'm equating the UN law to international law, because there's probably treaties to follow UN law, and there probably were at the time. There definitely were. And then there's Bayer, which made white phosphorus and other things for Germany during World War II, and everybody hates Germany during World War II because they were the losers, and well, they also had concentration camps and genocide, and invaded a lot of countries, killed a lot of people, tried to take over the world. So there is good reason to hate Nazis. But again, we're dehumanizing them because of all of their crimes. That's a non-pacifist way to go about things, but I guess I dehumanize people who are idiotic too. So, and cruel, I dehumanize people who are cruel, but you can't keep doing that because then you just end up dehumanizing everyone who eats animals. Remember that model? Make one for yourself. Figure out how much a chicken is worth. Is it worth 100 babies? Is it worth 1,000 adults? How would you feel if super developed chickens from outer space, I'm reading the Clockwork Rocket, so if we sent chickens out at whatever speed of light, something like the speed of light, and with the time dilation, they were able to evolve on that spaceship and become hyper-intelligent, strong AI level intelligence chickens, like in the chickens from, what is it, Kurzgesagt? In a Nutshell, the YouTube channel. Watch it, it's pretty good. But the chickens in the Fermi Paradox video, if they were those chickens and they came down to Earth and they're like, these humans, they're only worth 1,000 humans are worth an adult chicken, or 100 baby chicks. No, 100 humans are worth a baby chick. And then the chickens started eating us. If that was okay with us, then I'd say, okay, yeah, go and buy 1,000th of a chicken and eat it, and sacrifice your firstborn child or whatever. No, don't sacrifice your firstborn child, but you'd at least have the model of cruelty and like understand this is the cruelty I'm inflicting when I pay for people to raise and butcher chickens. And there's also other animals which are raised and butchered. It's called livestock. It's basically dehumanization or depersonification of animals. Personification? That's a literary term, but you're depersonifying them. You no longer see them as a person. Same as the people we drop bombs on when we half our tax dollars in the US goes to war, or at least the military, which is there to have wars so we can have a nice balanced oil-based international economy so that there's always demand for the US dollar when people need to get oil, which is in control of US, and you need to have the transactions when you purchase oil in US dollars so that there's demand for the US dollar so the US dollar is strong. And other reasons like selling oil products, which is basically everything now, because who would need renewable stuff if you can just make a killing off of being a cock brother? Did I mispronounce that name? So, rip monetization. So, I think that's it. Oh, and so the conclusion is, you don't need religion. I mean, maybe there are religions which introduce similar common sense models of morality, but I mean, well, okay, the two obvious ones are Christianity and what are the Muslims? Islam. Christianity and Islam. Similar myths, similar genocides, similar similar violence. Really, those two religions are there for justifying violence, and it's probably since they're so similar to each other that they hate each other so much. That's probably why Christians hate Islam and Islams hate Christianity. Well, Islam's probably hate Christianity because Christians bomb them so much, but Christians probably hate Islam because it's just so similar to Christianity. It makes them feel insecure. And you don't have to feel insecure about your religion. You can just become agnostic. If you if you value human well-being, you can become an atheist by refusing to worship any god which is responsible for all suffering on Earth. And this is not fated suffering. Okay, fate aside, it is all preventable suffering. Okay, Grey Goo aside, most of the suffering on Earth is preventable. Therefore, and imagine you're one of those billionaires who has the money to prevent suffering. Therefore, don't worship a fucking god who endorses suffering, endorses slavery, endorses raping women, stoning your children, all that fun stuff which the God in the Bible tells people to do, or just gamble with Satan so that you can see whether your best followers will murder their son or have their wives and kids killed by disease and be infected with various illnesses and have their cattle wiped out for the sake of having a bet with Satan to see if he still keeps worshiping you. No, that's sick. Don't worship that fucking God. And if you think that God exists, then you are sick and repugnant and abhorrent, and I no longer consider you a person. But for the people who aren't batshit crazy, go ahead and consider how many chickens is a human worth, and then adjust your diet. And no need to be religious, and if you're worried about death, you can always have cryostasis and uploading your brain to a computer, running it in a simulation, and always, instead of just being a humanist, being a transhumanist. Reminiscible out.